What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Benstant reaction, the instant reaction to Mavericks taking down the Minnesota Timberwolves. Before we get into it, thank you so much for making us a part of your day. However you are watching, however you are following, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts for free, on the iHeartRadio app, or you are putting a face to the voice and you are watching on YouTube, we appreciate that as well. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend about the Ben Garcia Show. Normally, this is where I rant, talk about some nonsense, but no need tonight as the Dallas Mavericks steal Game 1 on the road against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And my first reaction to the Dallas Mavericks stealing Game 1 is Jason Kidd deserves all the flowers. His team came in prepared. They used the quote-unquote extra rest to their advantage. Anthony Edwards looks gassed, and he came in with a game plan to work Anthony Edwards to go after that drop coverage. And credit to Kyrie Irving, credit to Luka Dončić, credit to the Dallas Mavericks. I originally thought this was going to be a 5-game series with the Minnesota Timberwolves just running roughshod over the Dallas Mavericks. I thought it was a mismatch, disadvantage. I thought that the stifling defense of the Minnesota Timberwolves would just be too much for Luka and Kyrie to carry. That Minnesota Timberwolves team, they are the better team head to toe. But it's where I miscalculated, and I'll get to it in just a minute, because I want to get more into the X's and O's of this game. Chris Finch, the de facto head coach, we know that he's kind of sitting out to the side, but he's feeding in all the information that the head coach needs. A guy's name in which I can't remember. It seems like he's very well respected, though, as well. But the Minnesota Timberwolves did not look prepared in this game. They just purely did not look prepared. Too much drop coverage. It seemed like they didn't know whether they wanted to blitz Luka or not blitz Luka. They weren't sure if they wanted to blitz Kyrie or blitz Kyrie. And ultimately, it cost them Game 1. And they don't have enough shot makers so that when Anthony Edwards isn't consistently putting them on his shoulders, or same thing goes for Karl-Anthony Towns, if he's not consistently putting them on his shoulders, they kind of don't have a lot of guys that make buckets. Jaden McDaniels came out quick with 3 3-pointers right out of the gate, but finished the game with 24 points as well, so he contributed. But not a lot of other options that can come in and be otherworldly. Jaden McDaniels, I say, but only ended up with 24 points because if Anthony Edwards isn't giving you 35, and Karl-Anthony Towns isn't giving you 30 to 35, one of those guys taking turns going off, it's just a formula for disaster for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So shame on me. I should have given the Dallas Mavericks way more credit, and I should have given Luka Dončić more credit, and same with Kyrie Irving. You know, I was a real skeptic of Kyrie Irving, the player, period. I felt like, and to my defense, I wasn't exactly wrong on this. Kyrie Irving has been emotionally never available and physically sometimes available for some time now. And I didn't think the backcourt of Luka Dončić and the pairing with him with Kyrie Irving could work. Two guys that don't play a lot of defense, two guys that kind of need the ball in their hands, two guys who are ball dominant, two guys who at times can seem to be a little bit of a head case. Kyrie more off the court, Luka more on the court. But shame on me. Kyrie Irving has been a slam dunk for the Dallas Mavericks. He has came in and has accepted the Robin role to Luka Dončić like that. It's been fun to watch. Those two have been an amazing pairing. And tonight, with those two being the best two shot makers on the floor, both teams combined, the Minnesota Timberwolves didn't know what to do. This is what the Phoenix Suns, my team that I support, should have done. They should have taken advantage more of that drop coverage and taken advantage more of that mid-range game, and they never did. But credit to the Dallas Mavericks, who actually have some heart in which the Phoenix Suns didn't possess. So the Dallas Mavericks are making them pay. And through one game, and it's just one game, although the Dallas Mavericks did steal home court away from the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is a big deal in some senses, but through one game, Jason Kidd was the better coach. He just was simply the better coach. Chris Finch was outcoached in this game, and you can't have that, because if you have the best two scorers and shot creators and playmakers on the other team in Kyrie Irving and Luka Dončić, but you have the better team overall in the Minnesota Timberwolves, the tiebreaker here is the head coach. And Jason Kidd, in my opinion, through one game, was a much better head coach. Now call it because Chris Finch isn't on the sidelines, call it whatever it is. But he helped exhaust Anthony Edwards, who was just gassed at the end of this game. He exposed that drop defense. The Minnesota Timberwolves are going to have to go in the lab and figure out what they're going to do. Either going to have to blitz Kyrie all game or blitz Luka Dončić all game. Give the Dallas Mavericks some medicine that they've been getting, having to deal with Anthony Edwards getting blitzed all playoffs long. And it's just to the point where right now, the two best scorers are on the Mavericks. The better head coach, as of right now, that can change, obviously, is Chris Finch. And that kind of leads to a 2-1 advantage over the Minnesota Timberwolves, who do have the much better team. And here's my last point. You know, we mentioned that the Minnesota Timberwolves have the much better team. And there has been all this praise heaped on Anthony Edwards. People are calling him the son of Michael Jordan, jokingly or seriously. That's for you to decide. They've anointed him the face of the NBA. They've anointed him a superstar. That we all forgot, with all this Anthony Edwards praise, who the best player and the more consistent player offensively is in this series, and it's Luka Dončić. Luka Dončić, when he gets to his spots, when he is feeling himself, there is nothing you can do. And if you were to pick between those two players, hey, who would you start a franchise with, Luka Dončić or Anthony Edwards? You're taking what Luka Dončić is now and the couple of years older, rather than the Anthony Edwards, who's 22 years older, but what he could be. Because you could talk all about that Anthony Edwards defense tonight. Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving torched it. They torched it up and down the court to the point where it wasn't competitive in some spots. And so it's kind of like the analogy of, if you remember that 2015, I guess I should say it like this. We have anointed and we have given superstar status, and we have said the new face of the NBA is going to be Anthony Edwards, whether you like it or not. And with all this Anthony Edwards praise, and with all this love Anthony Edwards has been getting over the past couple weeks, deservingly so, we forgot that the best player in this series, and the player who you would start a franchise with over Anthony Edwards, is Luka Dončić. He will take your soul and snatch it offensively. He, when he gets to his spots, is a more consistent offensive player than Anthony Edwards. He is a bona fide superstar just like Anthony Edwards. But if I was ranking the two, the best player in this series is Luka Dončić. And shame on me for just saying the Minnesota Timberwolves would win this series, because even if the Minnesota Timberwolves have the better team, the best player can always elevate the other team to a status and take them to a spot that they've never been before. The Dallas Mavericks have Luka Dončić, and the Minnesota Timberwolves do not. And that's an issue. And Kyrie Irving is playing the role of the best Robin in the NBA. And this, so far, through one game and what it might look like, is very similar to that 2022 NBA playoff series between the Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. The Phoenix Suns were the much better team. Top to bottom, much better team. It didn't matter because the best player is Luka Dončić. So as much as we want to anoint the superstar, the next face of the NBA, and heap all this praise to Anthony Edwards, deservingly so, we have to remember that the best player in this series, and I don't know how close it is Luka Dončić over Anthony Edwards. The best player in this series is Luka Dončić. So even though the Minnesota Timberwolves have the much better team up and down, it doesn't matter because the Dallas Mavericks will be in every game, and the Dallas Mavericks now have a real shot to win this series when even people like myself were saying this was going to be Timberwolves in 5. And the only reason for that is because Luka Dončić is the best player in this series. He's better than Anthony Edwards. You would start your franchise over Luka Dončić. You would start your franchise with Luka Dončić over Anthony Edwards if you had a chance, because offensively, he is just a dynamite player who is impossible to stop when he gets hot. The tougher player to game plan against is Luka Dončić over Anthony Edwards, and that is not debatable. And then you have the Robin, who is Kyrie Irving, who embraces that role, who has been a completely revolutionized Kyrie Irving this season. And you have idiots like me who thought the Minnesota Timberwolves would run roughshod over the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games, and you just realize that when the other team has the best player, you always have to give them a chance. And the Dallas Mavericks proved tonight that not only do they belong in the same conversation with the Minnesota Timberwolves, not only is Luka Dončić the most dominant and the best player in this series, they have shown that they have stolen home court, and they might even should be the leaders and the favorites to win this series. And the Dallas Mavericks, after stealing game 1 and after stealing home court advantage, are now firmly in the driver's seat. And man, I can't wait to watch the rest of it. Hopefully, this Western Conference Finals is as entertaining as it was tonight. And I'm not going to revise any predictions. That's not what I'm going to do. But this series is absolutely going to go 6 or 7 games.